If I'm anything at all, I am an overambitious girly. When I set TBRs for myself, I knowingly set them with the expectation that I won't get to all of the books, but I can't help myself because these are all books that I want to get to now. I want to read them before fall is over, and I have really high hopes for myself. I think I'm going to get to a lot of these, and these are all books that are just front of mind for me and that I have been dying to get to. Some of them I'm reading for videos, some of them I just cannot stop thinking about, and I want to talk about them with you guys. And you know, when I make these TBR videos, we know that eventually I will get to these books because there are 14 books on this TBR. To me, the end of fall is December 1st. Even though I know technically winter doesn't start till later, but then I'm in a wintry mindset and then I'll have a whole new TBR for that season. So these are the books I want to read through the rest of October and all of November. So let's get into it. First up, and most importantly on this list, is Rouge by Mona Awad. If you watched my recent video where I reviewed Bunny by Mona Awad and it was just a long yap session about how much I loved that book, then you will know why I want to pick up Rouge. If I'm certain that I'm going to get to any book on this list, it is definitely Rouge because I want to read it after the book I'm currently reading, which is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. Another banger, dare I say. I actually picked this book up last September when I was in Europe, and then I just didn't get to it, and now I cannot wait. One of you told me on Instagram that you actually liked this more than you liked Bunny, and that shook me to my core and actually made me really happy because that means there's potential that this book might even be better than Bunny, and I gave Bunny 5 stars. For as long as she can remember, Belle has been obsessed with skin and skincare videos. When her estranged mother, Noelle, mysteriously dies, Belle finds herself in Southern California dealing with her mother's considerable debts and grappling with lingering questions about her death. The stakes escalate when a strange woman in red appears at the funeral, offering a tantalizing clue about her mother's demise, followed by a cryptic video about a transformative spa experience. This is giving cult vibes, it's giving obsessed with beauty and skincare. Also, the copy I have is just so satisfying for some reason. I also want to read The Picture of Dorian Gray. I've been telling myself I'm gonna read this for the last like 4 years. This is kind of, or at least what some people have been saying, the classic that started to inform all of the other dark academia works. So I'm curious to see if that holds up. And by other people, I mean one person on TikTok that said she wrote her thesis on dark academia and was talking about all of the different books and how they influenced each other and so on. And she called this the father of dark academia, so that made me even more curious. Really need to add it to my list of classics that I've read, and I'm sure I'll like it. Popping in here real quick to say, if you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I also want to read In the Company of Witches by Orly Wallace, and the main reason I want to read this is because it's a cozy mystery that's said to be like Gilmore Girls, and I adore Gilmore Girls. So essentially, for 400 years, this family of witches has stayed in this kind of sleepy New England town, and they own a bed and breakfast, and then one day someone dies at their bed and breakfast. We have Januaries by Olivia Blake. I have read the Alice 6 series by her, and I love her writing. And this is actually one of her new releases, but from my understanding, it's a bunch of short stories. And this copy was actually gifted to me from the publishing house. It also has beautiful end pages, which I just noticed. I'm really excited to get to this. This one might lean more towards winter for me. The blue cover is giving me winter. I honestly had no idea that she was coming out with a volume of short stories, and I'm really excited to dive into them. Januaries features modified fairy tales, contemporary heists, absurdist poetry, and at least one set of actual wedding vows. There are 14 short stories in this. Then we have Babble by R.F. Kuang. Again, another one that's been on my list for a long time. I've probably put it in a few of these TBR videos. I think I'm actually gonna get to it this fall, and that is because I saw a girl reading the last, 25% of this book, and she was sobbing, and I looked into the comments and so many people were like, the last bit of Babble wrecked me. And I didn't realize we were crying over this book. And if I'm anything, I am a girl who loves to cry over a book. That made me even more excited to get into this, and I would love to just annotate the heck out of it. I have this feeling that this book is gonna be really dense and very information heavy, but I could be totally wrong. So I'm fully committing to actually reading it this fall. And we have Devotions by Mary Oliver. This is a collection of a lot of Mary Oliver's poetry. I have read Upstream by Mary Oliver and Dreamworks, which is another smaller collection of her poetry. I'm actually already 60 pages into this, but I've just kind of been picking it up every once in a while and reading some of her poetry. If you haven't read Mary Oliver before, she's very focused on nature, and her poetry is, I don't want to say simple, but it makes reading poetry fun because you don't have to work really hard to get any sort of meaning out of it. And that's something that sometimes she gets criticized for, but I actually think her poetry is really beautiful and very insightful. And it makes me feel very connected to nature even when I'm sitting inside my apartment in the city of Seattle. Then we have The Time Traveler's Guide to Elizabethan England. This is actually a nonfiction book, which essentially a historian wrote, and it covers everything and what the entire experience would be like if you were just picked up and transported, literally time traveled, and dropped into Elizabethan England and everything that you would experience. So I'm very excited to get to this. Fantasma, which I really want to read this before Halloween because, I mean, look at it. This is a fantasy novel, enemies to lovers, I believe. It is kind of like a magical game, and the only rule is do not fall in love, so obviously somebody falls in love. I've heard that it's kind of gruesome, which I'm a little bit nervous about, and this was a book of the month pick in September. I also saw that it's on Kindle Unlimited, and that I've been wanting to read another book on my Kindle, but I've been wanting to get through my physical TBR, so I think I'm gonna read it on my Kindle, because I also hate hardcovers, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a paperback girly. Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. This is another poetry collection, super popular. I think Noah reads this in the notebook to his dad. I'm actually reading this for a video, which I'm not going to share any details about right now. And I also really want to start this series, the Darker Shade of Magic series by V.E. Schwab. I loved The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I've heard such great things about this series. And I have the first two books sitting on my shelf. I actually thrifted both of them for $2. From Goodwill. Isn't that crazy? I don't really know what this is about. It is fantasy. It's set in London, and that's really all I need to know to be interested. Then we have If We Were Villains by ML Rio. This is basically like The Secret History. It's dark academia. I'm sure you guys have heard about it, but just in case you haven't, it follows a group of students. There's a murder. I think I'm gonna like it more because while I did really like The Secret History, as I've said before, a lot of the references just were over my head. And I've also heard that the plot is a little bit more fast-paced and it's just a little bit more digestible. Not saying I'm dumb, but kind of saying that. Blue Sisters by Coco Malores. I loved Cleopatra and Frankenstein, and this is about a group of sisters. I don't have any sisters. I have 4 brothers, and I would give anything. I would cut off my left leg. No, I wouldn't. But I would love to have a sister, and I'm just really excited to read this. I've heard it's about grief, so I'm preparing the tissues. But like I said, I love to cry over a book, and Coco Malores' writing is one of my favorites. The way she describes people's faces when they're having an emotion was something I really loved in Cleopatra and Frankenstein, and I'm hoping that's true with this book as well. And last but not least, I want to read Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I've only read Normal People by Sally Rooney. I have not read Conversations with Friends or Beautiful World, Where Are You? Something about this one just really has been enticing me. Again, this one is also about grief. I've been seeing a ton of good reviews, and I'm just really intrigued. I love the cover. I just feel like this book is calling to me, and I can't wait to get to it. So those are all the books I hope to read in the months of October and November. Let me know what's on your TBR in the comments down below, and I hope to see you in my next video.